Thomas Mitchell had served 3 tours overseas, but nothing prepared him for the battlefield waiting at home. His weathered hands gripped the legal papers that had shattered his world into fragments, each signature from his siblings cutting deeper than any enemy blade. The sprawling Montana ranch land his grandfather had fought to preserve through the Great Depression now stood labeled as worthless scrubland by his own blood. His brother James led the charge, demanding they sell to the highest bidder rather than honor their grandfather's dying wish to keep the land in family hands. When Thomas refused, they turned their backs on him completely, leaving him with nothing but rocky terrain, mounting debts, and the crushing weight of betrayal. The isolation felt more suffocating than any desert foxhole he'd endured. His German shepherd, Ranger, sensed the despair radiating from his master like heat from summer asphalt. The intelligent dog had been Thomas's constant companion since returning from service, understanding the unspoken language of a warrior's wounded soul. Together they faced each dawn on the seemingly barren 1,000-acre spread, 2 outcasts against a world that had written them off as yesterday's heroes. The bitter irony wasn't lost on Thomas that he'd fought to protect freedom overseas, only to lose everything that mattered to corporate greed and family betrayal back home. The Rocky Mountain wilderness stretched endlessly around their modest cabin, its jagged peaks creating a fortress of solitude that matched Thomas's emotional state. Morning mist clung to the pine-covered slopes like ghostly memories, while eagles circled overhead in lazy spirals that reminded him of surveillance drones from a different lifetime. This untamed landscape had been his sanctuary and his prison for the past year, each day blending into the next, as he struggled to make sense of his family's cruel dismissal. The ranch sat nestled in a valley where ancient glaciers had carved deep channels through granite bedrock, creating natural water features that his grandfather had always claimed held special significance. Tall grass swayed in mountain breezes, hiding secrets that generations of Mitchells had walked over without truly seeing. Wildlife thrived here despite the land's reputation for being agriculturally worthless, with deer paths crisscrossing through stands of aspen and lodgepole pine. Ranger had mapped every trail and scent marker across their territory, his keen senses cataloging details that escaped human observation. The dog's behavior had grown increasingly restless lately, his attention drawn to a particular section near the old mining claim markers that dotted the landscape like forgotten tombstones. Thomas often found himself wondering if his grandfather's stories about buried treasure had been more than senile ramblings, especially when Ranger's ears perked up at sounds that carried no meaning to human ears. Thomas's grandfather, William Mitchell, had been a prospector before becoming a rancher, arriving in Montana during the tail end of the gold rush, with dreams bigger than his modest stake. Family stories painted him as a man who understood the land's hidden potential, someone who saw value where others saw only rocks and rattlesnakes. The old man had spent his final years walking these hills with a mysterious purpose, often disappearing for hours with nothing but his surveying equipment and a leather journal he guarded jealously. After his death, the journal had vanished along with his collection of geological surveys and mineral samples, leaving behind only cryptic references to guardian angels and buried blessings in his final letters. Thomas's father had dismissed these ramblings as the confused musings of an aging mind, focusing instead on the cattle operation that barely broke even year after year. The family's frustration with the land's poor agricultural returns had festered across generations, culminating in this bitter divide that left Thomas standing alone against his siblings' unanimous verdict. Dr. Sarah Chen, the local veterinarian who had treated Ranger since puppyhood, often stopped by to check on both man and dog, bringing supplies and much-needed human conversation to their isolated existence. Her genuine concern provided one of the few bright spots in Thomas's increasingly dark world, though even her gentle encouragement couldn't penetrate the wall of despair surrounding his heart. The Chinese-American veterinarian had immigrated as a child, understanding the pain of feeling displaced and unwanted in a land that should have offered sanctuary and opportunity. Sheriff Bobby Westbrook had known the Mitchell family for over 2 decades, watching their gradual dissolution with the sadness of someone who understood that money could poison even the strongest family bonds. His occasional visits to check on Thomas served multiple purposes, combining welfare checks with the practical need to maintain relationships with remote property owners in his jurisdiction. The lawman had grown concerned about Thomas's increasing isolation, recognizing the dangerous signs of a veteran struggling with more than just family rejection. Young Emma Rodriguez, the 12-year-old daughter of the nearest neighbors living 5 miles down the mountain road, had taken to visiting Thomas and Ranger despite her parents' initial reservations about bothering the solitary veteran. Her innocent questions about military service and genuine affection for Ranger had gradually drawn Thomas out of his shell, reminding him that not everyone saw him as a burden or failure. Emma's visits became the highlight of both Thomas and Ranger's week, bringing laughter and purpose back into their routine in small but meaningful doses. The girl possessed an artist's eye for the landscape's hidden beauty, often sketching wildlife and geological formations while sharing stories about her dreams of becoming a national park ranger someday. Her enthusiasm for the land's natural wonders began slowly shifting Thomas's perspective from seeing the property as a burden to recognizing its potential as something worth preserving for future generations. The child's drawings often captured details that adults missed, her innocent observations sometimes revealing patterns in the landscape that suggested human activity from decades past. Old Pete Hawkins, the retired forest ranger who lived in a cabin at the valley's mouth, represented another connection to the land's forgotten history. The grizzled mountain man had worked these forests for 40 years before retiring, his knowledge of local geology and mining history rivaling that of any university professor. Pete's visits always coincided with Emma's, the old ranger taking pleasure in teaching both the girl and Thomas about reading the landscape's hidden stories. His weathered hands would trace invisible maps in the air as he described long-abandoned mining claims and forgotten prospector camps that dotted the wilderness like archaeological sites waiting for discovery. Pete had known William Mitchell personally, sharing stories about the old prospector's obsession with certain geological formations that seemed ordinary to untrained eyes, but held special significance for those who understood mineral science. The retired ranger's tales often mentioned strange sounds echoing through the valley at night, unexplained lights moving among the peaks, and the persistent rumors that the Mitchell land held secrets far more valuable than anyone imagined. Thomas found himself drawn to these stories despite his skepticism, especially when Ranger's behavior seemed to confirm that something unusual was indeed hidden in the landscape they called home. Pete's presence provided a bridge between the ranch's mysterious past and its uncertain future, his friendship offering Thomas hope that some connections could survive the destructive forces of greed and betrayal. The confrontation that would change everything began on a crisp autumn morning when Ranger's behavior shifted from restless to urgent, his ears pricked forward toward sounds only he could detect. Thomas was splitting firewood near the cabin when his faithful companion suddenly bolted toward the eastern boundary of their property, where old mining claim stakes marked territories that had been abandoned for over half a century. The dog's purposeful sprint carried none of his usual playful energy, instead displaying the focused intensity Thomas recognized from their military service together in search and rescue operations. Ranger stopped at a cluster of weathered granite boulders, circling them with increasing agitation while emitting low whines that spoke of discovery rather than distress. His tail held high in the alert position that signaled something significant hidden from view. When Thomas reached the location, he found his dog pawing at what appeared to be nothing more than accumulated pine needles and decades of forest debris. The veteran's trained eye, however, noticed subtle irregularities in the natural landscape that suggested human intervention from years past. Fresh scratches on the boulder surfaces indicated recent activity, while disturbed earth patterns revealed that someone else had been digging in this exact spot within the last few days. Ranger's nose pressed against a partially concealed metal object that gleamed dully through the organic matter, his excited panting creating small clouds in the cool mountain air. The discovery site sat perfectly positioned to catch the morning sun, its location chosen with the precision of someone who understood both concealment and eventual recovery procedures. Thomas carefully brushed away the forest floor covering to reveal a weather-beaten metal strongbox, its surface scarred by decades of mountain weather, but still intact enough to protect whatever lay inside. The box bore his grandfather's initials, along with a date from 1952, confirming that this discovery connected directly to the family's mysterious past that his siblings had been so eager to abandon. Ranger continued his excited circling, occasionally darting toward other locations as if following an invisible trail that led deeper into the pine forest surrounding their discovery site. The sound of approaching vehicles echoed through the valley, their engines laboring up the steep mountain road that led to Thomas's property, an unusual occurrence that immediately put both man and dog on high alert. Through the trees, Thomas glimpsed the distinctive black SUVs favored by corporate security teams, their tinted windows and aggressive styling out of place in the rustic mountain setting that rarely saw visitors beyond the occasional lost tourist. His military instincts kicked into overdrive as he recognized the deliberate spacing and coordinated movement patterns that suggested professional surveillance rather than casual exploration. Ranger's hackles rose as unfamiliar scents reached his sensitive nose, his posture shifting into the protective stance Thomas had seen countless times during their overseas deployments when danger approached their position. The dog's low growl carried a warning that resonated in Thomas's chest, confirming that whatever force was approaching their sanctuary carried hostile intentions that threatened everything they had left to protect. Marcus Blackwood emerged from the lead vehicle with the predatory confidence of someone accustomed to intimidating his way to desired outcomes, his expensive suit incongruous against the rugged mountain backdrop as he surveyed the property with calculating eyes. Two additional men flanked him, their military bearing and concealed weapons obvious to Thomas's experienced gaze as they spread out to establish tactical positions around the discovery site. Blackwood's company, Apex Mining Consortium, had been quietly acquiring mineral rights throughout the region under the guise of environmental restoration projects, using legal loopholes and family disputes to secure access to potentially valuable deposits. The corporate predator had orchestrated the family rift that left Thomas isolated and vulnerable, feeding his siblings carefully crafted reports about the land's worthlessness, while simultaneously conducting secret geological surveys that revealed its true potential. His insider knowledge of the government's upcoming infrastructure projects would make certain mineral deposits extraordinarily valuable, providing the motivation for this elaborate deception that had torn the Mitchell family apart. Ranger positioned himself between Thomas and the approaching threat, his powerful frame coiled with the tension of a weapon ready to discharge at the first sign of aggression toward his beloved master. The dog's amber eyes tracked each movement of the intruders with predatory focus, his lips pulling back just enough to reveal the gleaming canine teeth that had served them well in combat situations requiring swift and decisive action. Blackwood's security team wore the confident expressions of professionals who had executed similar operations countless times, their casual brutality hidden beneath corporate facades that fooled most victims until violence became necessary. Blackwood's smooth voice carried the false warmth of a practiced manipulator as he approached with hands raised in a gesture meant to appear non-threatening while his security team maintained their strategic positions. "Mr. Mitchell, I believe you've discovered something that belongs to my company. Our geological surveys from the 1950s documented mineral deposits in this exact location, giving us legal claim to anything extracted from this site. His words dripped with the confidence of someone who had used similar tactics to dispossess dozens of families across the mountain region, each victory adding to his growing empire of stolen resources. Thomas's jaw tightened as the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, revealing the orchestrated nature of his family's sudden urgency to sell the land that had sustained their bloodline for generations. The strongbox in his hands represented more than family history. It held the key to understanding why his siblings had been so willing to betray their grandfather's memory for what they believed was worthless scrubland. Ranger's warning growl deepened as Blackwood stepped closer, the dog's sensitive ears detecting the subtle changes in heartbeat and breathing patterns that indicated deception and malicious intent. The German Shepherd's training kicked in as he recognized the tactical deployment of potential threats around their position, his muscles bunching with the readiness to defend his master against overwhelming odds. Emma Rodriguez's voice called out from the tree line, her young presence adding an innocent element to the increasingly dangerous confrontation as she approached with her usual enthusiasm, unaware that she was walking into a situation that could turn violent at any moment. The 12-year-old girl's arrival shifted the entire dynamic of the confrontation, her bright smile and excited questions about the discovery creating a protective barrier that even Blackwood's ruthless nature couldn't easily breach. Emma's genuine delight in finding Thomas and Ranger at their excavation site contrasted sharply with the corporate predator's dark intentions, her presence serving as an unwitting witness to whatever violence might unfold in this remote mountain location. Blackwood's security team exchanged glances that spoke of complications they hadn't anticipated, their tactical advantage compromised by the need to avoid creating additional witnesses to their planned intimidation campaign. Thomas felt the protective instincts that had made him an effective soldier surge through his system as Emma skipped closer to examine the mysterious strongbox, her innocent curiosity placing her directly in harm's way. Ranger seemed to understand the elevated stakes as well, positioning himself to shield both Thomas and Emma while maintaining visual contact with all potential threats surrounding their position. The dog's tactical awareness impressed even Blackwood's trained operatives, who recognized the lethal efficiency of a military working dog defending territory he considered sacred ground. Emma's chatter about her latest art project and questions about the old mining equipment created an surreal soundtrack to the deadly serious standoff developing among the adults, her presence forcing everyone to maintain facades of civility while deadly intentions simmered beneath the surface. Her innocent observations about the beautiful morning and excitement over the historical discovery provided a stark reminder of what civilized behavior looked like, in contrast to the predatory calculations driving Blackwood's criminal enterprise. Old Pete Hawkins materialized from the forest like a guardian spirit, his lifetime of mountain experience allowing him to move through dense timber without disturbing so much as a twig underfoot. The retired ranger's weathered face hardened as he took in the scene, his experienced eyes immediately recognizing the threat posed by armed men in expensive suits who had no legitimate business on the Mitchell property. Pete's arrival added another complication to Blackwood's carefully planned operation. The old mountain man's reputation for protecting the wilderness and its inhabitants well known throughout the region. The retired ranger's voice carried the authority of someone who had spent decades dealing with poachers, claim jumpers, and corporate raiders seeking to exploit public lands for private profit. "Hey, Emma, honey, why don't you come over here and help me identify these beautiful wildflowers while the gentlemen discuss their business?" His suggestion was phrased as a polite request, but the underlying steel in his tone made it clear that he understood the danger surrounding the young girl. Ranger's tail wagged briefly at Pete's arrival, the dog recognizing a trusted ally who had often brought treats and shared stories during his visits to the ranch. The tactical situation had shifted again, with Thomas and his supporters now outnumbering Blackwood's team. Though the corporate predators still held the advantage of professional training and superior firepower, Pete's knowledge of the terrain would prove invaluable if the confrontation escalated beyond words. His intimate familiarity with every game trail and hiding place potentially providing escape routes that could save lives. Blackwood's patience began fraying as his carefully planned intimidation scenario devolved into an impromptu community gathering. The corporate shark unused to operating under the scrutiny of innocent witnesses who could later identify his methods. His security team leader stepped forward with barely concealed irritation, whispering urgently about the need to control the situation before additional complications arose that could expose their entire operation. Thomas recognized the tactical shift in his opponent's behavior, understanding that their window for peaceful resolution was rapidly closing as desperation replaced calculated confidence in Blackwood's demeanor. The veteran's hand moved instinctively toward the combat knife he still carried, a habit from his military service that provided psychological comfort in threatening situations like this increasingly volatile confrontation. Ranger's ears swiveled toward new sounds approaching through the forest, his superior senses detecting the arrival of additional players to this dangerous game being played out on the Mitchell family's ancestral land. Sheriff Westbrook's familiar voice called out from the direction of the access road, his timing either remarkably fortunate or the result of some protective instinct that had drawn him to check on Thomas at this crucial moment. The lawman's presence would normally de-escalate such confrontations, but Thomas sensed that Blackwood's desperation might drive him toward increasingly reckless actions that could endanger everyone present in this remote mountain location. Emma's innocent questions about why everyone looked so serious added an element of tragic irony to the scene, her young mind unable to comprehend the adult world's capacity for violence and greed. Pete's strategic positioning near the girl demonstrated his military background, the old ranger's body language suggesting readiness for combat despite his advanced age. Sheriff Westbrook's arrival transformed the tactical situation, but didn't eliminate the underlying danger, as Blackwood's team was too deeply committed to their operation to withdraw without achieving their objectives. The sheriff's weathered face reflected confusion as he took in the unusual gathering, his lawman's instincts immediately detecting the tension crackling between the assembled parties like electricity before a lightning strike. Blackwood smoothly shifted tactics, producing official-looking documents that he claimed granted his company excavation rights to the discovery site, his legal team having prepared multiple contingency plans for exactly this type of scenario. Thomas found himself caught between protecting the strongbox that represented his family's hidden legacy and avoiding actions that might escalate the situation into violence with Emma present as a potential casualty. Ranger maintained his protective position while continuously monitoring the security team's movements, his training allowing him to track multiple threats simultaneously while remaining ready to respond to any aggressive action. The German Shepherd's loyalty was absolute, but his intelligence recognized that a direct confrontation with armed opponents would likely result in casualties among the people he was sworn to protect. Emma's fascination with the discovery continued unabated, her artistic eye capturing details about the strongbox and its surroundings that would later prove crucial to unraveling the mystery that had torn the Mitchell family apart. The girl's sketching activity provided a distraction that allowed Thomas to study his opponents more carefully, noting the subtle signs of professional training that marked them as far more dangerous than typical corporate security personnel. Sheriff Westbrook's radio crackled with routine dispatch communications, the normal sounds of law enforcement operations providing an incongruously peaceful backdrop to the deadly standoff developing in the mountain clearing. Dr. Sarah Chen's Toyota pickup truck appeared on the mountain road, her weekly veterinary visit coinciding perfectly with the crisis unfolding at the Discovery site. The veterinarian's arrival added another witness to the increasingly complex situation, her medical training potentially crucial if violence erupted among the armed participants. Sarah's confusion was evident as she approached the unusual gathering, her concerned gaze moving between Thomas's tense expression and Ranger's alert posture as she tried to understand the threat level surrounding her friends. Blackwood's frustration reached a boiling point as his simple intimidation operation continued accumulating complications, each new arrival reducing his team's tactical advantage while increasing the risk of exposure for their criminal enterprise. The corporate predator's mask began slipping as desperation replaced calculated confidence, his true nature emerging as he realized that brute force might be the only way to salvage his carefully planned theft. Thomas felt the familiar calm of impending combat settling over his consciousness, his military training automatically cataloging weapon positions, cover options, and potential casualty scenarios as the situation deteriorated beyond peaceful resolution. Ranger's hackles rose higher as he sensed his master's shift into combat mode, the dog's own training preparing him for the coordinated violence that had served them well in overseas operations against hostile forces. Emma's presence continued serving as a protective factor that restrained all parties from immediate violence. But Thomas understood that Blackwood's increasing desperation might overcome even that psychological barrier if his criminal operation faced complete exposure. Pete's subtle hand signals communicated tactical suggestions to Thomas, the old Ranger's military experience providing valuable coordination for the defenders of the Mitchell family legacy. The standoff reached its breaking point when Blackwood's patience finally snapped, his corporate mask slipping to reveal the predatory nature that had driven him to orchestrate the destruction of an entire family for profit. His security team began closing their tactical circle around Thomas and Emma, their movements coordinated with military precision that left no doubt about their willingness to use violence to achieve their objectives. Sheriff Westbrook's hand moved toward his service weapon as he recognized the deteriorating situation, but his position left him vulnerable to crossfire that could endanger the civilian girl caught in the middle of this corporate power play. Thomas felt the familiar calm of combat settling over his mind as training took precedence over fear, his body automatically shifting into defensive positions that would maximize his chances of protecting Emma while minimizing exposure to incoming threats. Ranger's growl escalated into a warning bark that echoed through the mountain valley like a battle cry, his powerful voice carrying both challenge and promise of violence to anyone who threatened his family. The dog's tactical assessment of the situation was flawless, positioning himself to strike at the most dangerous opponent while maintaining escape routes that could lead Thomas and Emma to safety through terrain he knew intimately. Emma's growing awareness that something was seriously wrong manifested in her instinctive movement closer to Thomas, her young mind finally grasping that the adults around her were engaged in something far more serious than a simple property dispute. Pete's strategic movement toward better cover demonstrated his understanding that diplomatic solutions had been exhausted, his weathered hands moving toward the hunting knife that had served him well during decades of wilderness encounters with dangerous predators, both animal and human. Blackwood's final ultimatum crystallized the choice facing everyone present in that remote mountain clearing, his words carrying the weight of absolute determination to claim the mineral rights that would make his company millions. Last chance, Mitchell. Hand over that box and sign these papers, or my associates will help you understand the consequences of interfering with legitimate business operations. The threat was unmistakable, despite its corporate language, promising violence that would be explained away as a tragic accident in the dangerous mountain wilderness where help was hours away from the nearest populated area. Thomas's military experience had taught him to recognize the moment when negotiation ends and survival begins. Understanding that his next actions would determine whether Emma and Sheriff Westbrook survived this encounter with a predator who viewed human life as merely another business expense, Ranger sensed the shift in his master's energy, the dog's entire body coiling with the explosive potential of a weapon waiting for the command to engage enemies who had crossed every line of decency and honor. The German Shepherd's amber eyes locked onto Blackwood with the focused intensity of a predator selecting its primary target, his loyalty demanding that threats to Thomas be eliminated regardless of the personal cost. Emma's frightened whimper, as she finally understood the danger surrounding them, triggered protective instincts in both Thomas and Ranger that transformed them from defensive survivors into aggressive guardians willing to fight to the death for innocent life. Sheriff Westbrook's shouted warning to stand down came too late, as Blackwood's security team made their first overtly aggressive move, reaching for concealed weapons that would turn this mountain clearing into a battlefield where only the strongest and most determined would survive to see another sunrise. Dr. Chen's medical bag dropped from her nerveless fingers as she witnessed the transformation of a routine veterinary visit into a life-or-death struggle between good and evil. The explosion of violence began when Ranger launched himself at the nearest security operative with the devastating efficiency of a military working dog trained to neutralize armed threats, his powerful jaws clamping down on the man's weapon arm with bone-crushing force that sent the pistol spinning into the underbrush. Thomas rolled Emma behind the granite boulder that had concealed the strongbox, his body shielding her from the gunfire that immediately erupted as Blackwood's remaining operative opened fire with reckless abandon. Sheriff Westbrook's service weapon barked twice in rapid succession, his shots forcing the armed corporate soldiers to seek cover among the pine trees, while he attempted to establish a defensive perimeter around the civilians. The mountain wilderness erupted into chaos as Ranger systematically dismantled the security team's tactical advantage, his speed and agility allowing him to strike and fade like a furry missile guided by absolute loyalty to his master. Blackwood's panicked shouts for his men to control the situation revealed his complete unpreparedness for resistance from victims he had expected to intimidate into submission without significant opposition. The corporate predator's expensive suit became torn and dirt-stained as he scrambled for cover, his carefully constructed facade of civilized businessman crumbling under the reality of violence he had initiated but couldn't control. Thomas's combat experience guided his movements as he used the terrain to his advantage, drawing fire away from Emma while maneuvering toward a position where he could support Ranger's assault on their overwhelmed attackers. The girl's terrified crying provided a soundtrack of innocence, violated that fueled both man and dog's determination to end this threat permanently, regardless of the personal consequences they might face for defending their home and family. Pete's hunting knife found its mark in the thigh of the operative who had threatened Emma, the old ranger's accuracy undiminished by age as he protected the young artist he had come to love like a granddaughter. Ranger's tactical brilliance became evident as he used the mountain terrain to multiply his effectiveness, appearing and disappearing among the rocks and trees like a four-legged ghost that struck without warning before vanishing into cover. The German Shepherd's powerful bite rendered the first operative's gun arm useless, while his speed allowed him to reach the second gunman before the man could acquire a clear target on Thomas or Emma. Sheriff Westbrook's covering fire kept Blackwood pinned behind inadequate cover, the lawman's marksmanship forcing the corporate criminal to realize that his carefully planned operation had devolved into a survival situation he was unlikely to escape. Thomas emerged from cover with the smooth efficiency of a trained soldier, his combat knife gleaming in the mountain sunlight as he moved to support his four-legged partner's assault on their common enemies. The veteran's years of combat experience had taught him that overwhelming violence applied quickly often prevented the prolonged conflicts that resulted in higher casualty rates among innocent bystanders. Emma's presence behind the protective boulder served as a constant reminder of what he was fighting to preserve. Her young life representing everything good and pure that men like Blackwood destroyed in their pursuit of profit and power. The strongbox lay forgotten in the chaos, its contents less important than the immediate need to eliminate threats to the people Thomas had sworn to protect, with his life if necessary. Rangers' coordinated attacks with his master demonstrated the unbreakable bond forged between warrior and war dog through shared combat experiences that transcended the normal relationship between human and animal. Dr. Chen's emergency medical training kicked in as she prepared to treat wounded combatants on both sides. Her oath to preserve life extending even to those who had threatened innocent people with violence and death. The tide of battle turned decisively when Rangers' relentless assault finally overwhelmed Blackwood's remaining operative. The dog's powerful jaws finding their target with devastating precision that ended the immediate threat to everyone present in the mountain clearing. Thomas's tactical movement brought him within striking distance of Blackwood himself, the corporate predator's terror evident as he faced the combined wrath of veteran and war dog, whose loyalty knew no bounds. Sheriff Westbrook's authoritative voice commanded surrender as his weapon trained on the defeated businessman. But Thomas's combat-hardened expression suggested that formal arrest might not be the final resolution to this confrontation. The mountain silence that followed the gunfire seemed profound after the explosive violence, broken only by Emma's quiet sobbing and Ranger's heavy panting as adrenaline slowly faded from his system. Blackwood's expensive suit was torn and stained with mountain dirt, his corporate arrogance replaced by the cowering fear of a predator who had finally encountered prey capable of fighting back with lethal efficiency. The German Shepherd maintained his alert posture despite the apparent victory, his trained senses continuing to monitor for additional threats that might emerge from the surrounding wilderness. Thomas knelt beside Emma to comfort the traumatized girl while keeping visual contact with the defeated enemies, his protective instincts still engaged until he could be certain that all danger had passed. The strongbox that had triggered this violent confrontation lay beside the granite boulder, its secrets still waiting to be revealed once the immediate crisis had been fully resolved through proper legal channels. Pete's weathered face showed grim satisfaction as he surveyed the aftermath of the battle, his wilderness wisdom having contributed to the successful defense of innocent life against corporate tyranny. Dr. Chen's professional composure returned as she began triaging the wounded. Her medical expertise needed to preserve life even among those who had threatened their community with violence and exploitation. Dr. Sarah Chen's medical training proved invaluable as she arrived to treat the wounded security operatives, her veterinary skills translating effectively to human emergency care, while Sheriff Westbrook called for backup and ambulance services. The veterinarian's presence provided additional witness testimony that would prove crucial in prosecuting Blackwood's attempted theft and assault charges, her professional standing lending credibility to the incredible events that had unfolded in the remote mountain location. Emma's parents arrived in response to the sheriff's radio calls, their relief at finding their daughter safe mixed with horror at how close she had come to being caught in deadly crossfire between corporate greed and righteous defense. Thomas finally opened his grandfather's strongbox with trembling hands, revealing geological surveys and mineral rights documents that confirmed the land's tremendous value while exposing the depth of Blackwood's deception and manipulation. The discovery included his grandfather's detailed journal documenting secret meetings with government officials about strategic mineral reserves that would become crucial to national defense projects decades in the future. Ranger received the hero's welcome he deserved, his actions having saved multiple lives while preserving the Mitchell family legacy that his master's siblings had been so eager to abandon for corporate promises. The German Shepherd's unwavering loyalty and tactical brilliance had transformed a potential tragedy into a victory for justice over greed, proving once again that honor and courage could triumph over overwhelming odds when properly motivated. Emma's artistic documentation of the discovery site provided additional evidence that helped investigators understand the full scope of Blackwood's criminal enterprise and its impact on families throughout the region. Pete's wilderness expertise proved invaluable in tracking down additional evidence of Blackwood's illegal activities. His knowledge of the terrain revealing hidden surveillance equipment and buried documents that exposed the criminal conspiracy's full scope. The aftermath of the confrontation brought unexpected healing to relationships that had been poisoned by corporate manipulation and family betrayal. Thomas's brother James arrived within hours of the emergency call, his face pale with shock as he learned how close his family had come to losing everything to a predator they had unknowingly invited into their lives. The geological surveys from their grandfather's strongbox revealed mineral deposits worth tens of millions of dollars, transforming the supposedly worthless scrubland into one of the most valuable properties in the entire mountain region. James's tearful apology carried the weight of genuine remorse as he begged Thomas's forgiveness for betraying their grandfather's memory and nearly destroying their family's century-long legacy through greed and manipulation. The other Mitchell siblings followed in quick succession, each carrying their own burden of guilt and shame over how easily they had been deceived by Blackwood's fraudulent geological reports and manufactured financial pressures. Dr. Chen's gentle presence provided medical care and emotional support for everyone affected by the traumatic events, her compassionate nature helping to heal psychological wounds alongside the physical injuries sustained during the violent confrontation. Sheriff Westbrook's investigation revealed that Blackwood's criminal enterprise had targeted dozens of families across the region, using similar tactics of manufactured disputes and fraudulent documentation to steal mineral rights worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The evidence preserved in William Mitchell's strongbox provided the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy, leading to arrests and prosecutions that would eventually restore stolen property to families throughout Montana and neighboring states. Emma Rodriguez's recovery from her traumatic experience was aided by regular therapy sessions and continued visits with Thomas and Ranger, the girl's resilient spirit gradually overcoming the fear that had initially paralyzed her artistic expression. Her detailed sketches of the discovery site and the people involved became crucial evidence in the criminal proceedings against Blackwood and his associates. The young artist's keen observational skills, capturing details that adult witnesses had missed during the chaos of the confrontation. Thomas found purpose in helping other families who had been victimized by similar corporate predators, his military experience and newfound wealth providing resources to fight legal battles that individual families couldn't afford on their own. The Mitchell Ranch became a symbol of resistance against corporate exploitation, its successful defense inspiring other landowners to stand firm against intimidation tactics and fraudulent claims on their ancestral properties. Ranger's heroic actions were recognized with multiple awards from veterans organizations and law enforcement agencies, the German Shepherd's courage serving as an inspiration for other service animals and their human partners. Pete's wilderness expertise became the ranch's unofficial historian, his knowledge of local mining history helping to catalog and preserve the geological treasures that William Mitchell had carefully documented in his secret journals. Dr. Chen's veterinary practice expanded to include trauma counseling for both animals and their human companions, her unique understanding of the human-animal bond proving invaluable in helping families heal from experiences with violence and betrayal. The bonds forged during the mountain confrontation created an extended family network that provided mutual support and protection against future threats to their community's peaceful way of life. The legal proceedings that followed the mountain confrontation revealed the extensive nature of Blackwood's criminal operation, his company having defrauded dozens of families across the mountain region through similar tactics of manufactured family disputes and fraudulent geological reports. Thomas's siblings faced the uncomfortable reality of their manipulation by corporate interests, their guilt over betraying family legacy compounded by the discovery of their land's true value and their brother's near death defending it. Sheriff Westbrook's investigation uncovered a network of corrupt officials and legal practitioners who had enabled Blackwood's systematic theft of mineral rights from unsuspecting landowners throughout the state. Dr. Chen's veterinary practice became a gathering place for the community to celebrate Ranger's heroism. The German Shepherd's story inspiring other veterans to reconnect with service animals who could provide both companionship and protection. Emma's recovery from her trauma was aided by regular visits with Thomas and Ranger, the girl's artistic talents flourishing as she documented the healing landscape and wildlife that inhabited the Mitchell family's preserved wilderness. The mineral rights discovered in William Mitchell's strongbox generated enough revenue to restore the family ranch while establishing trust funds for Emma's education and artistic development, as well as scholarships for other children who had been affected by corporate exploitation. Thomas found peace in his grandfather's vision finally realized, the land's true value preserved for future generations rather than strip-mined for short-term corporate profit. The bond between veteran and war dog had proven unbreakable once again, their partnership saving not just their own lives, but protecting the innocent and preserving justice in a world that often favored the powerful over the righteous. Pete's wisdom and Emma's artistic vision combined to create a comprehensive record of the land's natural and cultural heritage, ensuring that future generations would understand the true value of what their ancestors had fought to preserve. The months following the confrontation brought gradual healing to the Mitchell family as they worked to rebuild trust and honor their grandfather's memory through responsible stewardship of the land he had died protecting. Thomas's leadership in the family's reconciliation process demonstrated the same courage and integrity that had served him well in military service. His willingness to forgive past betrayals, creating opportunities for genuine renewal and growth. The ranch's newfound prosperity allowed for conservation initiatives that balanced resource extraction with environmental protection, creating a model for sustainable development that other landowners throughout the region began adopting for their own properties. Ranger's intelligence and loyalty continued serving as an inspiration for the community, his story encouraging other families to adopt rescue animals and providing hope for veterans struggling with the transition to civilian life. Dr. Chen's relationship with Thomas deepened beyond professional concern as they discovered shared values and mutual attraction that had been hidden beneath the crisis that brought them together, their growing love providing healing for emotional wounds that had seemed permanent. Emma's artistic documentation of the landscape's recovery and renewal became the foundation for a children's book series that taught young readers about conservation, family loyalty, and the courage required to stand up against injustice and exploitation. Sheriff Westbrook's successful prosecution of Blackwood and his criminal associates earned him recognition at the state level. His dedication to protecting rural communities from corporate predators inspiring other law enforcement agencies to develop similar protective strategies. Pete's role as the ranch's historian and guide provided him with purpose and community connection during his retirement years, his knowledge and wisdom ensuring that the lessons learned from the confrontation would be preserved for future generations who might face similar challenges. Thomas Mitchell stood on his grandfather's land as the sun set behind the Rocky Mountain peaks, Ranger by his side as they surveyed the wilderness that would remain protected for generations to come. The German shepherd's tail wagged slowly as he sensed his master's contentment, their shared victory having healed wounds that went deeper than family betrayal or corporate greed. Emma's laughter echoed across the valley as she played with Ranger near the creek, Her young spirit fully recovered from the trauma thanks to the security provided by knowing that true heroes still existed in the world. The Mitchell family ranch would continue operating as both working land and wildlife preserve, its mineral wealth ensuring financial stability while maintaining the environmental integrity that William Mitchell had envisioned decades earlier. Thomas's siblings had reached out tentatively, seeking forgiveness for their role in the family's near destruction, their apologies carrying the weight of genuine remorse and desire to rebuild what greed had almost destroyed. Dr. Chen's regular visits had evolved into something deeper than professional concern, her admiration for Thomas's character and Ranger's loyalty blossoming into the possibility of love and family renewal that neither had expected to find after their respective losses and struggles. The mountain wilderness held its secrets safely now, protected by a veteran and his faithful dog, whose vigilance ensured that corporate predators would find no easy prey among the peaks and valleys they called home. Share your own story about the loyal companions who've stood by you through life's battles, because every veteran deserves to know their service and sacrifice matter to grateful communities who understand the true cost of freedom. The legacy of courage and loyalty that bound Thomas and Ranger together would inspire future generations to stand firm against injustice, proving that some bonds can never be broken no matter how dark the world becomes around those who choose honor over profit. Subscribe to hear more stories of courage and loyalty that remind us why some bonds can never be broken, no matter how challenging the circumstances become in our daily battles for justice and family. Our veterans and their four-legged partners continue serving long after their official duty ends, protecting the values and people that make freedom worth defending every single day in communities across America.